The morning air hung crisp and heavy with dawn mist as Dr. Abena Mensah adjusted her running watch. 5:45 a.m., right on schedule. Her Georgetown Medical School quarter zip and premium running gear spoke of success, but her movements carried the weight of constant vigilance. Even after 15 years in America, multiple degrees, and a position as chief of neurosurgery at Boston General, she still followed her morning ritual: run before the world wakes. Before the questions begin. Before the assumptions start. The rhythmic pounding of her feet against the pavement steadied her thoughts as she moved through the exclusive Beacon Hill neighborhood. $1,000,000 brownstones loomed on either side, their windows still dark in the early morning light. Her breath formed small clouds in the air as she maintained her pace, focusing on the playlist in her earbuds rather than the security cameras that seemed to track her movement. Officer James Reeves watched from his cruiser, coffee cooling forgotten in its cup holder. Third morning this week he'd spotted her. Something about her didn't sit right. The expensive running gear almost seemed like a costume, too perfect. And this neighborhood, well, he'd been on the force 20 years. He knew who belonged and who didn't. He keyed his radio. Dispatch, got a possible suspect matching that burglary pattern from last week. African female, athletic build, conducting what appears to be surveillance of high-value residences. Copy that, Officer Reeves. No current reports of suspicious activity in that sector. Going to conduct a field interview. The cruiser's lights flashed to life, painting the morning fog in strobes of red and blue. Dr. Mensah slowed to a stop, her movements deliberate and practiced. She'd been here before, different cities, different officers, same story. She removed her earbuds and raised her hands slightly, muscle memory from too many similar encounters. Reeves approached, one hand resting casually on his holster. "Ma'am, we've had reports of suspicious activity in this area. Mind telling me what you're doing here?" "Running," she replied, her accent carrying hints of both Ghana and London. "As I do every morning." "You live around here?" His tone made it clear he already had his answer. "Yes, 42 Marlborough Street." Reeves's eyebrows rose. "That's Chief Thompson's house." "Yes, it is. I'm his wife." The laugh that escaped him held no humor. "Right? And I'm the mayor." "Let's try this again. What are you really doing here?" "I've told you who I am. Dr. Abena Mensah-Thompson, Chief of Neurosurgery at Boston General and wife of Police Chief Marcus Thompson. You can verify this with a simple phone call. Or we can verify it down at the station. Turn around, hands behind your back." Dr. Mensah didn't move. "Officer Reeves? Yes, I can read your nameplate. Before you make a career-ending mistake, I suggest you look at 3 things." Her voice remained steady as she continued. "First, the ring on my left hand. It's a custom piece commissioned by the Boston Police Department for command staff spouses. Second, the house security camera recording this interaction, the one my husband had installed after the last time something like this happened. And third, your own body camera, which I trust is operational." Reeves's hand tightened on his holster. "Ma'am, I'm not going to ask again." "No, you're not," she agreed. "Because in about 30 seconds, your radio is going to crackle to life. My husband gets an alert every time I stop moving for more than 2 minutes during my run, a safety measure we implemented after I was detained last year in Providence. He's probably watching this unfold on his phone right now." As if on cue, Reeves's radio sparked with static. "Officer Reeves, Chief Thompson requesting your current location and status." The color drained from his face as recognition finally began to dawn. Dr. Mensah took a step closer, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "But before you answer that, I want you to understand something. This isn't about who my husband is. This isn't about my degrees or my job title. This is about you seeing a black woman running in an affluent neighborhood and immediately assuming criminal intent. This is about the thousands of others who don't have cameras recording, who don't have police chiefs for spouses, who don't have the privilege to stand here calmly explaining why they deserve to exist in spaces like this." More lights began appearing in windows as the neighborhood stirred. Several phones appeared behind curtains, recording the scene. "You're going to answer that radio call," she continued. "You're going to explain to my husband why you attempted to detain his wife without cause. But more importantly, you're going to spend the next month learning why this happened in the first place. Ma'am, starting tomorrow morning, 5:45 a.m. sharp, you're joining my running group. Not in your cruiser, on foot. You're going to learn what it feels like to be watched, to be questioned, to be assumed guilty until proven innocent. And you're going to share that experience with every officer in your precinct. She adjusted her earbuds, preparing to resume her run. Don't be late, Officer Reeves. Punctuality matters in both our professions. As she jogged away, leaving Reeves standing in the growing morning light, phones continued recording from windows and porches. Within hours, the video would spread across social media, but this story was far from over. The next morning, Reeves arrived at 5:42 a.m., wearing department-issued PT gear and an expression that mixed shame with determination. Dr. Mensah was already stretching on her front steps, joined by her husband, Chief Thompson, an imposing figure even in running clothes. "Right on time, Officer Reeves," Chief Thompson said, his voice carrying both authority and disappointment. "Ready for your first lesson?" The run that morning was silent save for their footfalls and measured breathing. But as days turned into weeks, something unexpected began to happen. Other officers joined the morning runs, then community members. What started as a punishment evolved into a movement. Local news picked up the story first, from confrontation to connection, how a morning run changed a community. Then national outlets followed. Dr. Mensah's approach, choosing education over punishment, understanding over revenge, resonated across the country. The running group grew, becoming a space for difficult conversations about race, power, and privilege. Reeves, initially defensive and resistant, began to see the world through different eyes. The transformation wasn't immediate or easy, but it was profound. One morning, 3 weeks into their runs, the group paused at their usual halfway point, a small park overlooking the Charles River. The sun was just beginning to paint the water gold when Reeves finally found his voice. "I never saw it before," he said, his breath still heavy from the run. "How many times I must have done this to others? How many lives I might have impacted?" Dr. Mensah handed him a water bottle, her expression thoughtful. "Recognition is the first step. What matters now is what you do with that understanding." The group had grown to nearly 30 regulars, officers, doctors, lawyers, teachers, all running together, all learning from each other. Among them was Sarah Chin, a local reporter who had been documenting the transformation. "It's remarkable," Chin commented, notebook in hand. "What started as a confrontation has become a model for community policing reform. How did you know this would work?" Dr. Mensah smiled, watching as officers and residents chatted easily, sharing water and stretching tips. "I didn't. But I knew that shame and punishment alone never create lasting change. Sometimes you have to literally walk, or run, a mile in someone else's shoes to understand their journey." The impact rippled beyond their morning runs. The Boston Police Department implemented new training protocols based on their experience. Other cities reached out, looking to replicate the program. Dr. Mensah was invited to speak at police academies and community forums across the country. But perhaps the most profound change was in Officer Reeves himself. During a community meeting 6 weeks after that first confrontation, he stood before a packed auditorium, his voice carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom. "I thought I knew what good policing looked like," he admitted. 20 years on the force, and I was proud of my record. But Dr. Mensah showed me that being a good officer isn't just about enforcing laws, it's about understanding the community we serve. All of the community. The program they developed became known as Dawn Patrol, regular community runs that paired officers with residents from all walks of life. The simple act of running together, sharing stories and experiences, broke down barriers that years of formal diversity training hadn't touched. 1 year later, Dr. Mensah stood at a podium, accepting an award for community leadership. The audience included many familiar faces, runners from their morning group, officers who had gone through the program, community members who had witnessed its impact. "What happened that morning could have ended very differently," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the hushed room. "Officer Reeves could have made an arrest. I could have filed a complaint. We could have let anger and fear drive our actions, as they so often do in these situations." She paused, looking out at the gathered faces. Instead, we chose to run. Not away from the problem, but toward understanding. Every step we took together was a step toward breaking down the barriers that divide us. Every conversation we had while catching our breath was a chance to see each other as human beings, not as stereotypes or statistics. In the back of the room, Officer Reeves stood in his dress uniform, eyes glistening with unshed tears. Beside him, Chief Thompson nodded slowly, pride evident in his expression. "This isn't just about running," Dr. Mensah continued. "It's about creating spaces where we can be uncomfortable together, where we can ask hard questions and have difficult conversations. It's about recognizing that change doesn't happen in grand gestures, but in small steps taken consistently, day after day." The program's success led to its adoption in police departments across the country. What began as one woman's response to discrimination became a blueprint for community police relations. But for Dr. Mensah, the most meaningful change could be seen every morning at 5:45 a.m. when a diverse group of runners gathered on her front steps, ready to take another step toward understanding. "The path to change isn't always clear," she often told new participants. "But if you're willing to lace up your shoes and show up, you've already taken the first step." And so they ran, dawn after dawn, their footsteps echoing through the quiet streets, a rhythm of hope, a cadence of change, a testament to the power of choosing understanding over anger, education over punishment, and the simple act of running together toward a better tomorrow. Before you go, let me ask you something. If this story moved you, if it made you think about justice differently, then you're exactly the kind of person we're looking for. Our channel isn't just about sharing stories, it's about building a community of people who believe in standing up for what's right. Every day, we bring you real stories that most media won't touch. Stories of ordinary people fighting extraordinary battles. Stories that will entertain and motivate you. Some will make you angry, some will make you cry, and sometimes, like today, some will make you believe in justice again. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because our next story, well, let's just say it involves a teacher who risked everything to expose a corrupt school system, and trust me, you won't want to miss how this one ends. Smash the like button and drop a heart in the comments if you believe in justice, and let us know what story you want us to cover next. Remember, your voice matters, your support matters, and together, we can make sure these stories are heard. See you in our next video, Justice Warriors.